my body. I don't like it on a cup I'm drinking out of. I don't like it on the end of my cigarette. I don't like it on my clothes. I don't like lipstick. Could that be a result of a past life issue?
You never know if it would be, if it makes no sense for your current life, if you don't recall having any negative experiences during your present life with it, then more than likely there could be an issue that has its origins in a past life, because that's, a lot of times when we have issues, fears or allergies or whatever, or even likes and preferences or something nagging at us in our current life that make no sense whatsoever to our current life, sometimes we find that they have their origins in a past life, actually.
I think that may be one of them, then. I'm going to have to research that a little bit about myself.
Yeah, especially if you never had any traumas or any negative experiences or anything during your present life with it, and it makes no sense to your present life. It may have its origins somewhere else.
It definitely has no issue. It's just weird. I just don't like it. Don't like it. But it is what it is. So that's something about me that nobody ever knew. Well, that was a weird kind of silence. So, when was your first book published?
My first book?
Yeah.
My first book was actually the Traveling the Parallel Universes book, and I published the first edition of that back in January of 2012, but then I rewrote it and republished it in October of this past year. So the new edition of it actually is, the first edition was more of a personal account, and the second edition, it's interesting because it has some scientific information in it about the parallel universes, and it has a lot of information about other people's experiences and my own experiences, and just really fascinating facts.
Yeah, and where did you do your research to write that book? What kind of research have you done?
I read some books and metaphysical books, and also some books, that were based in science, and then I did some research in some science magazines and journals as well.
Yeah. Excellent. And is there any kind of, do you believe, I should say, that there's a connection between, past life regressions and alternative dimensions?
I believe that there can be, because, I believe that, different timelines and different dimensions can actually house, timelines that aren't necessarily in our current time period. I honestly believe, we're here in the year 2015, but somewhere in some other dimension or on some other timeline, they might be back in the 1800s or, even in the future at some point. So I think there is a connection, with different time periods and everything. And, who knows, we could have lived some of our past lives in a different place and not necessarily here also.
Yes. There's a study now that suggests that when we're in our deep sleep, that our subconscious mind blinks out of existence of our body and goes into some other kind of alternative dimension. Have you heard anything about like that?
I've heard exactly the same thing, that a point, I want to say, a part of our consciousness, I guess, like you said, exits our body, and enough energy stays behind in our physical body to keep us alive, while we're out, voyaging around, and we actually go to different realms while we're sleeping. Yeah. And I've heard, also that's why, when we sleep, relatives, family members that have passed away, those are actual encounters with them. They aren't imaginary. It's actually that part of our consciousness that physically separates from our physical body and goes out there in these realms and actually visits with them. So that I find that quite interesting as well.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's 100% possible because there is, I mean, scientific proof, fact, this is a scientific fact, that when we're in our deep sleep, we don't dream. We do not dream from that point. There's like 2 hours of the night that our mind completely goes blank. And scientists don't know what happens to our brain within that 2 hours. Everything kind of shuts down. And this is where that research has started to, indulge from that particular moment. And that's why, it's very conclusive to suggest that, yeah, it is possible that, within that 2 hours, we're bouncing in and out of these dimensions.
Right.
I think that too.
What I wanted to ask was, and I think what you're referring to more is astral travel. So when you talk about traveling to parallel universes in your book, Trish, are you referring more to astral travel, like what Jason's talking about, or are you actually referring more to physically traveling parallel universes?
In my book, I refer to actually physically traveling to parallel universes. So
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So an example that I give on my website, because a lot of people have been confused about that, and I had to specifically put that on my website. An example would be, you're walking down the street one day, you're probably out walking alone, and all of a sudden you just notice that, a building that is always there is now gone, or another building is there. The landmarks, are changed. They're totally different. You know that you're in maybe your city or your town, but yet things look a little bit different. And so that temporarily you may be in a different place. It's like, where is such and such? I remember this landmark being there, but now it's not there anymore.
That would be more like time travel.
That would blow my mind.
It would?
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to, yes, it would be similar to time travel.
So have you actually personally experienced this phenomenon, or have you met others who personally experienced this for the research in your book?
Yes, I have. Both. I have experienced this quite extensively. I mean, it happens to me quite often, and
wow.
I have met other people. After I wrote the first edition of my book, many people approached me via email and told me that they've had these similar experiences. And then there's a lady that I connected with named Cynthia Sue Larson. She's an author also, and she has a newsletter called Reality Shifters, and a lot of people have been writing lately to her, and she's been publishing their experiences in her newsletter about their experiences with this phenomenon as well. So it seems like it's happening more and more often with people these days.
Yeah, well, I think as the popularity grows, much like paranormal investigating and anything else, as the popularity grows, you wind up meeting a lot of other people that not necessarily have been through it, but want to jump on the bandwagon, if you know what I mean. And,
right.
Yeah, you got to kind of separate and try to figure out who is who, which sucks. I mean, it does suck, but it happens no matter if it's investigating or even baseball, for Christ's sakes. I mean, if baseball turns into the new big thing tomorrow, then everybody's going to be the all-star of the game and so forth and so on. I've been playing for 20 years, And it's funny because I've met, in the paranormal community, I've met people that, are 28, 29 years old, and if you ask them, they've got 20 years of experience in paranormal investigating, and it's like, you've really been investigating since you were 9, dude? Really?
Right.
Really?
Right.
How much investigating did you do with that 8 o'clock curfew?
How
Please
so?
tell me. You know what I mean?
Do tell. Yeah. That was in the tent with the flashlight in the backyard.
Yeah, pretty much eating s'mores over a campfire while their dad is shaking a whip at them. I don't know, but it makes no sense. But yet people do tend to say that, and I'm sure it's the same thing in what you're doing as well. You're trying to collect good viable evidence, and I'm sure there's some viable people out there that are coming to you with legit claims and legit stories to share with you, and I'm sure you're going to get some that you listen to it, and it's like, are you serious? Really? It makes no sense at all. No, it doesn't even correlate with what you're saying.
Right, yeah. It's sometimes it is a challenge to weed, the information out. I agree with you because I've had situations like that before where I'm left scratching my head and wondering, I want to give the person the benefit of the doubt, but do I really, want to go as far as, jumping on board 100%?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's all good, though. It is what it is. I like the effort. I do like to see the effort, though.
Trish, what are some of the characteristics of the parallel universes that you experienced? Are there any differences between, the different universes that you've come into contact with, or, have you heard that there are, other universes that you've maybe repeatedly documented that people have, supposedly come into contact with?
Yeah, well, some of the characteristics that I've noticed about, what myself and others have experienced are, usually you end up on the Earth. I mean, the Earth is duplicated. It's like you don't end up in some foreign planet, thank God, that's totally different. Some people might enjoy that, but I prefer, an Earth environment. But usually people tend to report, that it's, pretty much on the Earth in their home environment or somewhere, around their town or whatever. And one of the other characteristics is, objects and people and animals disappearing and appearing, from out of nowhere. And one strange and interesting characteristic is sometimes people will report that people have died, and then you all of a sudden will hear that, if a week or so or maybe months down the road or years that they're alive, and you're scratching your head thinking, I heard they died. So we call it the Mandela effect, being dead and then alive, because what happens is the people, because the Earths are duplicated, in the different universes, the people are pretty much the same, except for some people are dead in the universes, but they're alive in the others. And usually it happens on a big scale, like it's celebrities. You notice celebrities being dead and then alive, and another place like Larry Hagman. The actor Larry Hagman is one that was reported as being dead but then alive, and Gene Stapleton's another one. And
right.
And then there are differences sometimes between the universes, like the histories tend to be different, like alternate histories, usually on a personal level, but sometimes on a major level. The history that to be a fact, everybody claims that that's not the history, it's always been another way. And
right.
sometimes people don't have any memory of any events that actually took place at all whatsoever. And then, like I mentioned before, the landmarks could be different. Like, you'll walk along and see this landmark, like a statue somewhere or something that you never saw before in your life in this park that you've been going to for years and years. But now all of a sudden there's this statue there, and it looks old and weathered as if it's been there for 20 years or something, but for a fact it's the first time you're ever seeing it. So these are some of the characteristics and the differences that people report, occurring with this phenomenon.
Right.
Could this be a cause of something like deja vu?
That can happen. It can, definitely. It's really, strange because what I've found can tend to happen is when you cross over into these parallel universes temporarily,